Okay, so welcome everybody to Saratoga Whiskey Club, tasting number 158, part two. We had a week ago tonight our in-person fake Feis Ile event, which was in the backyard of one of our members here in Saratoga. I kind of went crazy with cooking, so if you guys can make it in person at one year, definitely try and make it work because we had a seafood fest along with a lot of these great whiskeys. So, but tonight we're doing it all over again, at least the whiskey, and it's really a fun tasting. All of these bottles, except for one, were brought back from my most recent trip to Scotland. We do have a couple of people online with us tonight that were with me, Dave and his son Connor. So they're reliving some of these drams. But you know, you don't always get the opportunity to taste. Five of these are festival release. One of them's a distillery exclusive, but you don't always get the opportunity to taste them all together. So it's kind of fun. Back in 2019, which was the first time I went to the festival, actually the only time I went to the festival, I went to a dinner one of the evenings that was emceed by David Broom, the famous book writer and whiskey guru. He led us through all of the festival releases from that year, along with some food, and it was great. I mean, I really remember that night very well because you know, you visit these distilleries and you taste the festival release bottle or multiple. Some distilleries have multiple, and you're just so focused on that distillery that you're not thinking about all of these other expressions. And it's really nice to kind of compare and contrast and see how all of these distilleries are different and what they decided to do this year or last year with their releases. So we're getting to do that tonight, at least with a handful of them. So and some really special ones at that. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking anymore because we need to kind of jump in and get right at some of these whiskeys. So last week I did the order a little different than what I'm planning on doing with you guys tonight because again, last week was my first time kind of doing this. So I started last week with the Bunnahabhain, which is the most expensive bottle on the placemat tonight. But it was more powerful than I expected it to be. So and I'm reversing it with the Bowmore. I had the Bowmore second last week. So tonight we're gonna actually start with the Bowmore 19 year. So this is a really beautiful bottle. Hope you guys can see this. Might be a little shiny with the lights in the back. I'll try and do my best. But Bowmore, which is in the town of Bowmore, one of the 12 distilleries now on Islay. Kind of crazy how many distilleries are making whiskey now. Just in the last few years, there have been three more after Ardnahoe. So not all of them are producing yet. But yeah, it's kind of crazy how many whiskeys are being made. You have Port Ellen, you have Port Natruin, and you have the Lagan Bay distillery. So all three really new in the last just few years. And we always thought that Ardnahoe and Kilchoman were so cool because they were these younger new distilleries. Well, now they're the older, well, not Ardnahoe so much, but Bowmore is not. Bowmore has been around forever. 1779 is the actual date that they like to use, that they were illicit distilling before they were legal. So they put that on their bottles, which is kind of cool. But they have always released some pretty great festival releases. And this one is without no exception. This is a really, really beautiful whiskey. So this year they did release multiple, but the one that was available still that we could purchase was this 19-year Bowmore. This whiskey is double matured in virgin oak. So double matured means that, that it was first in a virgin oak and then it was in another virgin oak for multiple years as well. So they don't say exactly the timeline. It just says double matured in virgin oak barrels. So we know though that it's at least 19 years old, the whiskey that's in here. So Bowmore is noted as well, not for a very heavily peated dram. Most of their whiskeys are kind of in that mid-range of peat level. And I think this one kind of falls into that category as well. And I think it's a really beautiful expression. So we're going to start off with this one. This is a bottle kill. Have a little bit left so I can share with you guys. But cheers, everyone. Here's to the Feis Ile Festival 2024. I hope you enjoy these 6 whiskeys that we're going to have tonight.
Cheers.
How you might not, but so what I get with Bowmore a lot is there's a meatiness to the kind of nose. It's kind of thicker, meatier, not heavily peated. It's not like this Laphroaig kind of smoke that's going to knock you over, or Ardbeg. It's kind of more of a muted, meatier style. Maybe think like barbecued meats, not necessarily like super salty, or there is definitely some saline to it, but it's not, again, like some of these true coastal peat monsters. I mean, there definitely is some saline on the nose, but it's not crazy. I think more barbecued meat. Oh, yeah, really, really nice. So virgin oak, for those that don't know, is basically the equivalent of new charred American oak. So when we do a new charred American oak barrel for bourbon here in the United States, we call it a new charred American oak barrel. But in Europe, in Scotland and Ireland, a virgin American oak barrel is the same thing, basically. So this barrel has not held whiskey in it before. This is not an ex-bourbon barrel or an ex-sherry barrel. This is just a new charred American oak barrel. So think about that when you're tasting this, because you're going to get actually some of those vanilla notes, sweet notes that you get, from the oak that we use when we're making bourbon. So kind of just think of that, a new charred barrel. You're getting really some of that vanillin kind of note on this as well.
What's the ABV, Charles?
ABV on this is 54.8%. The cost of this was $256.34. So not a cheap bottle by any means. It was a fairly large outturn. I'm just trying to see what it is here. Let's see. Trying to remember how many they came out with. Got a very high rating on Whiskey Base, which is a really good indicator of quality. Just trying to see here. Oh yeah, here we go. 3,500 bottles. So not a small release, but also not a gigantic release. You'll find that with the festival, that's actually a fairly large number of bottles for, you know, some of these releases. However, you know, when we start talking about like Laphroaig is just gigantic. It's, you know, it's a festival bottle that goes all over the world. Same with Ardbeg. You know, both of their releases are global releases, and we're talking, you know, like 20,000 bottles. So 3,500 bottles is not really a lot, even though it sounds like it might be. I mean, if you're thinking virgin oak, American, you know, you're probably talking 15 barrels, maybe something like that. So, you know, not insignificant again, but not gigantic. What do you guys think of this one? Such a quiet group.
Yeah, this is a good one to start on. This is nice.
Full disclosure, Dennis does have a bottle of Glenfarclas to the side.
Ah, okay, that's fine. We won't torture Dennis with the peat smoke too much. I hope that he smells them at least, so he can get a little bit of a sense of that.
Well, this one wasn't overly smoky though. I thought this was a good level.
Yeah, so typically, and again, one thing to think about too is when you have a new charred barrel, the barrel is going to give it a lot of influence, right? The barrel has got a lot of this char, the wood is ready to influence the whiskey. Whenever you have that, it is going to actually mute a little bit of what else is going on. You have to think about that a little bit. So if you're using a refill barrel, you know, a barrel that's been used before, maybe even a second fill or a third fill, you're going to taste a lot more of the spirit in those used barrels than you are going to in a virgin American oak barrel, just because that oak influence is going to be stronger in a new barrel. But Bowmore's ppm level, let's see here. Yeah, so the normal Bowmore is around 30 ppm, which is kind of right in the middle. You know, Ardbeg and Laphroaig, they can get up to 50. 30 is kind of right in the middle. It's not insignificant. It's definitely there. It's just we've got a lot of other things at play. We have new oak, and we also have age, 19 years. That's quite a long time to also be in new oak. You know, you think about American whiskey, and when you get over that 15-year mark in new oak, it really starts to take on a lot of oak character that you don't want. We have hotter temperatures too in the US, so that obviously plays a big role in that. But you have to think about that as well anywhere in the world. You know, new charred oak is going to impart a lot of oak notes, and you really only want to go so long until that oak takes over. So definitely a barbecue dram, I think. And Bowmore is one of those really wonderful distilleries that has its own malting floor. Not everything that they make is using the floor malt that they do in-house, but they do use a significant amount, and it's just a wonderful distillery to visit. In terms of tours, I really feel like it's one of the best tours on Islay. You know, because you have that floor malting experience. They're also just really nice people there, and you really go through the whole distillery head to toe, and then you end up in their warehouse. And we had a pretty nice little warehouse tasting. Just two whiskeys, but they were really fantastic, and older than this, older than the 19-year. And then we went into their bar. and tasted this as well. So we got a really nice selection of whiskey from Bowmore, and it's really a great place. And you can walk there. It's just right down the street from where we were staying. So that helps too.
Did they let you do a bottle pour?
A what?
A bottle pour? Did they let you?
Oh,
pour your
hand
own-
fill? No, they didn't have any hand fills there.
See, that would have topped it off.
Yeah, they always have special things to buy though, so it kind of makes up for it. But yeah, they don't. Bowmore is not known for doing your own. However, they do have hand fills on the shelf from time to time that are already filled. You're not just doing it yourself. So pretty special whiskey. Actually, the owner, one of the owners of the Bowmore Hotel where we stayed, Peter, who's the son of the owner, but he's also pretty much an owner now. He gave me one night a really special dram. I didn't expect it at all, but he poured me a hand fill from Bowmore. It was like a 26-year hand fill from Bowmore. It was not a cheap dram, but oh my God, it was really, really delicious, and very kind of him to do that. But really, really great whiskey. We don't get a lot of really fun expressions here in the United States, unfortunately, from Bowmore. We have kind of the standard range, which is nothing to jump up and down about. It's not bad, but it's not like gonna wow you. There is one expression that if you see it, I would buy it. It's called the Doris Moore, and that's more readily available here in the US, and that is a cask strength version of Bowmore. Probably the best Bowmore that you can get here in the United States. And the price keeps going up on that too, but definitely worth having. Okay, enough talking about Bowmore. Everybody enjoy that one to start? That was a good one to start with.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, now we are going to move to Bunnahabhain. Bunnahabhain is another incredible distillery. I mean, truly, it's hard to complain about any of the distilleries on Islay. They're all really wonderful. But it definitely has a place in my heart. It's kind of this distillery that's been kind of stuck in history. I mean, Bowmore as well hasn't changed a ton, even though they're owned by Beam Suntory. But Bunnahabhain hasn't really changed much at all. Like, it's still this really old school place. They don't really allow too many photos. They do in every part but the still house. But when you get to that still house, they're like, nope. They'll take one of you from outside, but not that they're protecting anything, but it's like this old school mentality. We don't want anything blowing up. Don't take photos, whatever. But they do a really, really great festival. The Bunnahabhain Day is a really, really fun day at the distillery. And well, I'll explain really quick because some people don't know what the festival is. I should have started with this, but the Feis was started many, many years ago. And it's a festival that happens at the end of May every year. And it started out originally as a music and dance festival. Traditional music, traditional dance. They still do that. It's still a big part of the festival, but whiskey has taken over. Whiskey has definitely become the forefront. Maybe to the island's chagrin, because it has lost a little bit of its tradition with the music and dancing. It's still there, but it gets overshadowed by far from the whiskey fanatics that come. Now, they make a lot of money on the whiskey fanatics, so it makes up in some way. But so the way it works, it's actually an 8-day festival. It's really, really long. And if you go for the whole time, which I did in 2019, you're you're whiskeyed out, let me tell you, by the end of this festival. And the way it works is every day is devoted to a distillery. And there are 2 or 3 days now that are devoted to 2 distilleries because there are more distilleries than there are days. But so when you go to that distillery for that day, they usually have a big stage set up. They're playing music. There's a band. They have, stations for food, for drams. They're doing special tours. They're doing special warehouse tastings. They're doing what they call master classes with their head distiller or their master blender. It's really amazing, and it's pretty hard to go to these days. It fills up, years in advance now. The tickets, when they become available for the classes, sell out like so quickly now. It's really hard to get into some of these special classes, but it's really fun. And if you can do it, try and do it. It's worth doing it once, at least once. However, when you go like we did, a week and a half after the festival, you have the whole island to yourself to do whatever you want, which is also really great. And you're going to get the distillery visits that you really want to do, and the warehouse tastings as well. And Bunnahabhain is known for their warehouse tasting. There is a gentleman there who unfortunately was away doing a fundraiser when we were there. His name's David Brody. He's an amazing, amazing guy. And his warehouse tastings are known all over the world. And we had a great warehouse experience as well. A young kid did ours and he did just great. But they have 4 different barrels in the warehouse that we siphon whiskey out of into your glass, and they're pretty amazing. It's a really fantastic experience. And so we were in the gift shop after our warehouse tasting, and I think the group was pretty buzzed. And there was one of the warehouse barrels that I really liked, and I was going to buy it. And actually, I was thinking about buying that one for the club. It was a Pedro Jimenez barrel. Can't remember how old it was, but fairly old. And Chad, who was on our trip, kind of whispered to me, he said, "Don't buy that bottle." And I was like, "Huh, okay, that's kind of weird." And I kind of assumed between the lines that there was something going on behind the scenes, that they were buying that bottle for me as a gift, which was very sweet of them, which they did eventually give to me. So I didn't buy the Pedro Jimenez bottle, but that gave me enough money to then go ahead and buy this really special bottle. I was not planning on buying this bottle, but since that gift came through, I was like, screw it, I'm going to buy this bottle. This is a $500 bottle we're tasting next.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, this is the Bunnahabhain 23-year festival release, which we actually didn't get to taste while we were at the distillery. I did actually. They did give me a little dram at the desk at the counter when I bought it, just because they were nice. But this was not part of the tour or anything like that. So yeah, this is a 23-year Bunnahabhain. They released, I think, 3 bottles this year for the festival. And this was, I don't think this was the most expensive one. I think there was one that was just like a single cask that was more expensive, but that disappeared like almost immediately when they had their festival day. This one is 23 years. It's called Triple Sherry Wood Finish. Interesting. You don't often see a triple sherry wood finish. Totally something that Bunnahabhain would do, which I love about them. They love playing around with sherry as well. That's a big deal for them. This one is 53.3% ABV. And let me read a little bit about this bottle, because this is a really special bottle. Again, this was well over a 400-pound bottle. It says, crafted exclusively for the Islay Festival, this experimental whiskey combines some of the best sherry cask finishes synonymous with Bunnahabhain. Amontillado sherry, Manzanilla sherry, and Oloroso sherry. Complex and robust, each of the flavors reveal themselves, taking you on a journey of discovery with notes of creamy fudge, vanilla peel, or vanilla pods, and a hint of tobacco. The result, an exceptional sherry bomb of a dram. So,
Wow, the tobacco on the nose.
here goes another bottle kill. I squeezed as much as I could out of these bottles so that we could all partake in this. So this one might actually be more up Dennis's alley, being a sherry bomb that it is.
I made a note, doesn't suck.
Yeah, this one doesn't suck. It better not suck. Yeah. This one has some depth. It has some quite a bit of flavor to it. You know, I thought it was a better dram to have after the Bowmore, just because the virgin oak, you know, there's less of that red fruit note or any of that red fruit note. To tell you the truth, it's going to lead up to this kind of sherry note. What's interesting in my glass, oops. What's interesting in my glass is that it's very cloudy. I don't know, are your glasses cloudy? This is the last dram of the bottle, so it's very, it's possible that there's some sediment in mine, which isn't in yours.
I'm not seeing any.
You're not? Okay. Yeah, interesting. Mine's very, very kind of cloudy. It's definitely not clear at all.
Well, don't throw it out.
Wow. Yeah, this really doesn't suck. That's good.
Now, in terms of numbers of bottles, they don't say on the bottle. Nobody wants to tell. Let's see here. Yeah, so they did have, just so you know, there was a 2024 festival release. It was a 27-year-old Muscatel cask finish. That was a festival bottle. And that one was only 264 bottles. And it was released on Bunnahabhain Day. That one, they're saying, was $760, but I'm sure it was more. Let's see here. Okay, here's some more information. So what's cool about this, and we've seen this a little bit before with the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society. They've done these cask exploration releases from time to time where you can buy bottles that were distilled on the same, the barrels were filled on the same day, you know, long time ago, and then they took them out of the barrels and then finished them in like 4 or 5 different types of sherry or whatever, but they were all distilled on the same day, so you could really see what that cask finishing did to change that whiskey, even though the whiskey is the same exact whiskey. So same kind of deal with this. This was distilled in 1999. The spirit was then transferred into a trio of sherry casks. On the 4th of November of 2009, it was put into Amontillado casks. So if you think about that, that's 15 years in Amontillado, after being in bourbon for 10 years. That's a long time in Amontillado. It was put into Oloroso casks on the 20th of June in 2011. So again, 13 years in Oloroso, pretty long time. And then it was put into Manzanilla casks on the 12th of September of 2016. So 8 years in Manzanilla. And then those were married together. So they were all distilled, again, same day or same year, then put into 3 different sherry barrels at different points, and then brought all back together again by their master blender, Julian Fernandez, which then came out at 53.3% ABV. Tasting notes on their website. The nose freshly baked almond pastries are met with sweet berries, creamy fudge, rose petals, and a hint of desiccated coconut. Palate, fresh vanilla pods, butterscotch, and creamy strawberries are balanced with honeyed cashews, wood spice, and a gentle hint of tobacco. Finish, dry finish with pine needles and black currants. Wow, I don't know if I got that, but pretty good dram. Very sherry focused. I mean, a little difficult to actually taste the distillate itself. There's so many different like sherry notes coming at you, that it kind of mutes the distillate a little bit. I mean, you can still kind of get it, but it's very sherry. I mean, there's no question the sherry takes over. But very delicate, beautiful, savory. What did you guys, Connor, what did you think of Bunnahabhain when you were there for the warehouse tasting and your experience there?
That was one of the really nice tastings that we went on. I quite enjoyed that one. And like you said, our young English tour guide did a pretty credible job taking us through that distillery and then through the tasting.
Yeah, I thought he did really well, considering he wasn't there that long, and
He was like 22 and right out of
he was
college.
pretty young. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes that can go really bad, and sometimes it can be just fine. And this was just fine. Sometimes they don't know anything, but he had spent quite a bit of time in England at a distillery, and I'm trying to remember which one it was now. It wasn't Cotswolds. It was a known distillery, but that was good for him because you kind of need that before you come to Bunnahabhain. With the legacy behind Bunnahabhain, you have a lot to live up to, being a tour guide there, especially subbing in for David Brody in the warehouse. That's a tough task for anybody. All right, we haven't knocked you over the head too much with too much peat smoke at this point. Actually, this triple sherry wood, it's really not even a peated dram. So Bunnahabhain, when they release a peated whiskey, they would put on the bottle Moine, M-O-I-N-E, and that is the term that they use for peated. So if you've ever had the 12-year Bunnahabhain, you're going to know it's an unpeated single malt. The 21 or the 18-year Bunnahabhain is one of the best unpeated Islay single malts that there is. And unfortunately, that's skyrocketed in price. That used to be a whiskey. If I was going to a really special dinner, I would buy a bottle to bring with me to share with people to try and convince them that Islay is not just for peat heads. And that's when the bottle was around $100, $120 maybe max. Now I think it's gone way out of range, but that was even very expensive for a whiskey back then, but really beautiful, beautiful dram. And if you've ever had that or haven't had that, definitely try and taste that. Really good whiskey. But again, like Bowmore, there's not a lot of Bunnahabhain here in the US that really represents what Bunnahabhain can do. I mean, they're great whiskeys, don't get me wrong, but they're not like the core release is you know, it's great for like intro Islay drinkers. Again, nothing wrong with them at all, but there's nothing that's like, oh my God, blow your mind drams. But
Where's all the good stuff going?
well, you know, they release a large amount in their core expressions, the 12-year, you know, they do these non-age statement releases now that you'll see quite often, which again, they're not bad and they're relatively good price whiskeys. But, you know, they don't release any single cask offerings or cask strength offerings. Those you really only can get either when you're there or if you're lucky to see something special come along, but that doesn't really happen too often with Bunnahabhain. They like to just stick to their ways. They're not a big producer. They're not producing a ton of whiskey. So, you know, it mostly just goes into their core expressions.
Interesting.
Yep. Okay, let's move on to Laphroaig. Let me pull up my notes on this real quick because this is an interesting one. I was trying to find out the bottle count again, and it's not doing it to me. All right, hold on. Yeah, I can't find it, but all right. So what's really cool about the Cairdeas release, which is what they call their festival release. So whenever you see the Laphroaig Cairdeas in the store, and you might still see, you know, last year's or the year before, because they hang around for a little while. They're not ones that just disappear instantly, because they're huge releases. These are releases that are going all over the world. The US gets a pretty significant allocation of this release. But Cairdeas means friendship in Gaelic. So that's where the name comes from. Laphroaig is very much well known for their Friends of Laphroaig program, which anybody can sign up for. You basically just submit your name and email and maybe your birth date, and you're a friend of Laphroaig. And what they do is when you go visit, which we didn't do this time, we did visit Laphroaig, but we didn't do what they do for the Friends of Laphroaig. They will actually give you a little flag of the country that you come from, and you can go out into the field and stick your flag in your plot of land. As a Friends of Laphroaig, you are technically an owner of a little plot of land behind the distillery. It's whatever. I mean, it's fun. I've done it, but it's not like anything to, you know, it's more fun to actually get the little flag and take the flag home than it is to go out in the field and stick your flag there, because there's so many flags out there already. And but they do give you a dram when you come to the distillery. If you're Friends of Laphroaig, they'll give you a special Friends of Laphroaig dram. So it's worth signing up and doing. You'll get bombarded with emails, but that's okay. You know, it could be worse. It could be, you know, some other scam or something. But the 2024 release is in honor of the 30-year anniversary of the Friends of Laphroaig. So they have been around now 30 years doing this. And what they did is they took two of their favorite releases and combined them. So over the years, the Cairdeas is going to change. It's never going to be the same. And so what they did is they took two of their favorites, which happened to be the Triple Wood and the PX releases, and they combined them. So Triple Wood just means exactly that. It's in 3 different types of wood. And the PX. What they did, it's first matured in ex-bourbon and quarter casks, and then it's finished in Pedro Jimenez sherry casks. So you have some bourbon notes in this for sure, especially with the ex-bourbon and the quarter casks. And then you get that sherry. It's not going to be the sherry sweetness that we had with the last dram. Obviously, that was packed with sherry. This is a much lighter kind of sherry note.
You know what the ppm is on this?
Let me take a look. So this should be their standard ppm. This shouldn't deviate from a typical Laphroaig ppm, which the average Laphroaig is a 55, but most releases are typically around 45. So it's going to be probably in that in between 45 and 55 ppm, which again is at the higher range of Islay. You know, there are some special releases that go above 55, but for the most part, everything is 55 and under on Islay, except for a couple of special releases from distilleries. So one thing to think about with this is not your older, you know, rich, like what we just had. We're going kind of the opposite direction now. We're going back to kind of the ground base of Islay. This is going to be definitely more peat forward. This is going to be younger. It's going to be probably sharper. It's going to have an edge to it. This is 52.4%. So it's not actually higher in ABV, but it probably tastes hotter than what we've had so far. And that's again, because of the youth. That's also because of the barrel types that are being used. We're now getting back into that bourbon, ex-bourbon and quarter cask world. However, on the nose, I'm still getting some of those barbecued meats that we had from Bowmore. So we're kind of going back to that first dram. And definitely some salinity again. I mean, in terms of nose, it's definitely more representative of the first dram than it is the second dram. This is more your traditional Islay, it's got that almost sparkly note to it. It's almost effervescent in a way. It's kind of has this, bubbly kind of quality, which is, it can bubble in your throat, which can also just be a turnoff for some people because it is quite peaty and sharp. But if you really like Islay peated whiskeys, this is kind of right in your wheelhouse. It's not that classic older, softer peat. This is more of your, this is Laphroaig. I mean, Laphroaig is all about, oh, hello, you're on Islay. This is what we do on Islay. We drove past the peat bogs that Laphroaig uses. They're cutting the peat right there. They're doing floor malting as well. Again, not all of it's being used for their production because they make so much whiskey, and they do make a lot of whiskey. Laphroaig is one of the most produced Islay whiskeys behind Caol, in terms of production and volume. Some people might
Say,
get
Joe, that being said,
what's that?
well, it's saying like it is a peaty dram, but there's a lot going on there on the nose and the palate that isn't just peat.
Mhm. For sure.
Question, what is it that brings about the meaty flavor? What in the process? Or-
So, I mean, some of it's going to come down to the peat level smoke, but again, we had that with Bowmore just at 30 ppm, and we have it now at 45, 55. So it's not just ppm, but it definitely comes from peat. There's no question, but a lot of it comes from the barrel maturation, and so Bowmore with the virgin oak being double matured, and now here we are back to ex-bourbon and quarter casks. So quarter casks are smaller casks. Quarter casks will impart more oak quickly because of the size. They're smaller. So we're kind of getting back into that oak forward mode, whereas Bunnahabhain is not. Bunnahabhain are these big sherry butts, that are not imparting a lot of the oak. They're imparting a lot of the sherry notes, but not a lot of the oak notes. So we're kind of getting back into that peat oak balance. And then on top of that, you throw in a little bit of the PX. The PX is known to kind of have that juicy sherry kind of note, which will add some of that meatiness as well when you combine that with peat. So it's kind of a mixture of everything. There's not like, as you'll see as we go on with this tasting, especially when we get to Caol, it doesn't always become meaty. It can be very juicy and smoky and not meaty. The Bunnahabhain is probably a bad example because there really wasn't any peat in that. So you can't really, look for that with that expression, but you do get a lot of this kind of note. And when you go to Islay and you're tasting some of these peaty drams that use, especially sherry, you are really thinking that you're on a barbecue on the beach. And that's probably one of the first kind of recollections that I would have, is that, smoked fish on a beach, drinking an Islay whiskey. It kind of goes hand in hand. Now I am getting a little bit of that medicinal note on this one too. There is a little bit of that Laphroaig Band-Aid quality to this, which is characteristic of Laphroaig. Not a bad thing. Again, we're not drinking Band-Aids or drinking a first aid kit, but there is a little bit of that going on with this, along with the salinity as well. But I agree with you, Jeff, on the nose. There's lots going on here for sure. And this one is available. We actually have this in the shop. It's $109.99, so it's not crazy price. again, larger release. Last year's was 104.99, so the price has gone up a little bit, and it probably will over time. You know, every year go up, just the way the world of whiskey seems to be working these days. But they're also a Beam Suntory company, so like Bowmore, you know, they're owned by a big conglomerate. You know, that's basically got their hands. They don't like to talk about the Beam part of it. They don't like the American side to it so much. They like the Suntory side. They're trying to get rid of the Beam part of it as quickly as possible. This is one also that if you like it, it should get better with each sip. If you don't like it, it won't. It will probably get worse with each sip. But for me, I do enjoy this dram a lot, actually. And it seems to be progressing in the right direction. And it's also about your palate getting used to that sharpness of Laphroaig. Again, it's not a sharpness, but it's definitely a more punchy dram, you know, than what we've had prior. And I was glad I can include this on this tasting because I was waiting for it to come to the States. I wanted to include another festival bottle. And this one came literally the day before I bottled these. So 2 days before we did or 1 day before we did the in-person tasting. So
This is really wonderful. I like this.
yeah, I mean, it's not going to be for everyone, that's for sure. But
Mhm.
if you like it, it should be in your wheelhouse. I'm glad that we have a really good mix of like people here tonight too, and last week as well. You know, I know not everybody's into peat, and a lot of that has been something that's been created typically because of a poor past experiences with peat, and you know, or a bad start or whatever. But you know, the purpose of tasting lots of whiskey and not just peated whiskey, but lots of unpeated whiskey is to evolve your palate so that you can go back to peat or try peat if it's not something that you like, and try to, with your palate being more used to drinking other things or learning other things, you know, maybe digging through the peat, getting past the peat, not letting the peat be this barrier to what's behind it. And you know, it's as we get to know what these barrels do to whiskey in general, it'll help, you know, with that as well, because you'll start to then look for flavors from those barrels that you already know from unpeated whiskey that you can then translate over to peat. You know, and then the other thing to think about is Islay peat is different than other peat. You know, when we taste whiskey from Highland Park or we taste whiskey from Talisker, we're not dealing with the same peat that's coming from Islay. You know, we're talking about Highland peat, which is much more floral and has other qualities, whereas Islay peat is much more seaweed and shells and salty, and you know, it's much more coastal than Highland Park, for example, or Ardmore, which is a space, or not a space side, but a Highlands distillery. You know, even Balvenie makes peated whiskey. You know, they're not using Islay peat when they do their peated whiskey at Balvenie. So it's kind of fun to then try these different styles and see how they differ. All right, enough babbling. I always babble too much. All right, we're halfway through. We're now back to a bottle that we brought back. These last three we brought back. So the Cairdeas, the Laphroaig, was the only one that did not come back from Scotland with us. We're now going to Lagavulin. Another bottle kill here.
All right, so this is in a different, from the list that you sent us before, this is in a different position also. Did you change it around?
What did I have on the list before?
The KO,
Kalila? Yeah.
Toledo.
I changed it. I actually changed it last week as well. We're doing this the same order that we did last week, except for the first two we swapped. And it was more about thinking about the barrel types of the last two whiskeys, and we'll talk about that when we're done with Lagavulin. But yeah, so the Lagavulin's first. So these next two whiskeys, these are Diageo distilleries on Islay. So we know Diageo owns 26 distilleries on Islay, in Scotland. The two three Islay distilleries now, Lagavulin, Kalila, and Port Ellen. So Port Ellen is now operational again. They were a closed distillery that had been making whiskey on Islay for many years. And then they closed, and now they've reopened recently. But at Port Ellen is where they do a lot of the malting. So Port Ellen is known for their maltings, which is a big facility that literally that's all they do is they malt barley. So they have the big floors where they're germinating the barley, and then they'll dry it with the peat smoke. So whenever you're having a lot of these, especially the Diageo peated whiskeys, a lot of that's coming from Port Ellen. They're the ones that are malting the majority of that barley. So Lagavulin, however, is quite different than Kalila in terms of Diageo distilleries on Islay. Lagavulin only makes single malt whiskey that's released as a single malt. Okay. Kalila makes a ton of whiskey that's used for blends, and we'll talk about that next. But what Lagavulin makes is going into the Lagavulin 8-year that we see, the Lagavulin 16-year, which is the classic Lagavulin that most people have seen or tasted, which is probably the best. And if there was one expression in the US from a massive scale that has the best kind of what Islay can give, is probably the Lagavulin 16. I mean, it's like the classic Islay malt. But then they do a lot of other special releases. They do the Nick Offerman 11-year releases every year, which are really great. They do a 12-year cash strength, a special release that does come to the States. It's quite allocated, but that is fantastic, and it's pretty expensive now, but it's really good. They did the Game of Thrones Lagavulin 9-year. So there's lots of other Lagavulin expressions that come to the States. But the festival, they do some really fun releases. This year, they did a really expensive release, which we didn't buy as a club. And I can't remember now if it was 23 years or is it 21 year. Crazy expensive. We're talking $2,000 expensive.
No.
Oh, 29-year, sorry. 1,800 bottles, 29 years old. And it was around $2,000. Crazy. I mean, the Drammers Club, which is a great whiskey club around the world, and Charlie, who I know very well, he started that in New York City. They bought a bottle of that to share with their club. I'm sorry, guys. I was not going to buy a $2,000 bottle of Lagavulin.
Come on, man.
I'm really sorry. I apologize.
You should have been in the advent calendar. Come on.
Yeah, that's a different advent calendar. All right, so I did buy this 10-year Lagavulin festival release. This was still $201.87, not a cheap bottle for a 10-year single malt. There were 1,800 bottles of this released. This was also an experiment, so it's kind of interesting. Bunnahabhain with their triple sherry wood finish, that was an experiment, 23-year-old. This was also an experiment, and this is actually quite unique for Lagavulin. What they did with this whiskey is extra heavily peated. So they did a something that they don't normally do, which really they upped the peat level. And this was an experimental trial, and they decided to release it as their festival release, which I thought was actually pretty cool. Now this is definitely, just look at the color of this. You know, we're talking ex-bourbon for the most part. They don't say, let me see here. Let me look up my notes on this one. So let's see here. So we got, hold on, shoot, what is this? All right. So it says here, this is a prototype of extra heavily peated stock that was sampled during the Lagavulin malt mill session at last year's festival, when a few lucky fans experienced it at a special tasting. Heavily charred, first fill, ex-bourbon American oak hogshead casks. So actually no sherry whatsoever on this. This is just ex-American oak hogshead. The notes that they put here: savory maritime nuances of iodine and dry seaweed with an underlying strong smoke. Complex bottle remains true to the beloved Lagavulin profile cherished by fans. The distillery manager writes, let's see here, tasting notes. Nose, mild, clear, and dry overall. Quite some prickle. Slow to rise. The first notes to emerge are maritime, suggesting salt crystals, iodine, dry seaweed. In the background, gentle smoke hints at coal dust and peat ash, joined after a while by a faint carbolic note. Aroma becomes more mineral if water is added, while the smoky note recedes. Palate: creamy, smooth, mouth-filling, and surprisingly full-bodied texture brings forth a sweet initial taste with a mouth-watering appeal, soon becoming lightly salty with fast-growing, billowing smoke. Lightly coating as it spreads across the tongue, and simply very smoky. Powerful in its sheer clarity of taste. Finish: medium length with more smoke and hot white peppery spiciness, finishing dry. It becomes lightly saltier with a dash of water, yet the pepper still punches through. So when you take peat and do it with American oak and no sherry influence whatsoever, but truly just ex-bourbon hogshead and highly peated. Now they don't say the ppm level, even though this has got to be higher than their normal, just because they said it was experimental. Their normal ppm is 35. So we're probably talking similar to what we just had at Laphroaig. So this is probably closer to a 45 to 55 ppm ex-bourbon hogshead. Now, very citrusy. If you nose this, you're going to I get a lot of citrus notes. I'm getting some buttery notes, some vanilla notes on this as well. Very lemon, lots of lemon. So this is your typical ashy, kind of non-sherry or non-sweet peated dram. It's going to be a little buttery. It's going to have that kind of citrus. I'm getting actually little orange peel in here too. I mean, it definitely has that white pepper note too. The pepper is coming through. But it has that, it's very ashy. It's kind of I mean, definitely not drinking an ashtray, but there's definitely that ash note to it. You know, this is a very, very typical, really good. I think this is an excellent expression from Lagavulin. It's not as lightly peated as normal, which is okay in my book because they have incredible distillate. And so you're tasting with this dram the distillate that you normally can't taste when it's covered by the sherry. So when you're drinking the 16-year, as good as I love that. I think it's a very well balanced blend of bourbon and sherry barrels. This one, you're truly getting what Lagavulin at its underlying core is going to taste like, without being covered up by, you know, either oak or sherry, because this is a hogshead as well, so a little bit larger barrel than our typical first fill bourbon barrel. I very much enjoyed this whiskey at the distillery.
Sorry if I missed your explanation. Did you say how is this so light for a 10-year in color?
Well, because it's a refill barrel. So it's not this is not a first fill bourbon barrel. Let me just totally make sure. I don't want to say the wrong thing. Oh no, it is first fill. So it's a first fill ex bourbon, but it's a hogshead, so it's a little bit larger than a typical bourbon barrel would be. It's 50 liters larger. So normal bourbon barrel is 200. This is 250. So less surface area for the wood, and it's young. It's 10 years. So you're not going to get a lot of color from an ex-bourbon barrel, especially a hogshead, in a short amount of time. If this had gone on another 6, 7, 8 years, it would be darker. But again, this is more, you know, you're smelling and you're tasting more of the distillate coming through, even though it's a higher peated product. But just because that barrel is used and it's larger, you know, it's not virgin oak. We're not talking new charred oak here. We're talking ex-bourbon, even though it is first fill. And that's, I think, why you're getting some of those citrus notes coming through is the first fill. I'm sure this is not in Dennis's wheelhouse. No. No sherry and a lot of peat. I'm curious who likes this one, because it's not going to be for everyone. Dave and Diane, not your wheelhouse.
Well, Diane says she'll drink anything, but
I'm not talking about that. Like, what would you drink?
No,
But-
I know
Yeah.
Diane will drink anything.
I am not going to say that, but
I definitely prefer the first two over us two.
The last two, okay. Well, I think you'll enjoy the last two as well. So, but
Well, I like sherry, and so the Laphroaig definitely appealed to me. But I like this a lot. I have the Lagavulin 16,
okay,
and it's sort of a go-to on certain nights,
yep,
whatever. And you're right. There's something very different about this. There's something. You said it's the distillate that I'm tasting.
yep.
I'll defer to you. That's what I'm tasting, but I really like it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's not going to be for everyone, but yeah, it's pretty tasty if you like it.
I will offer hope to the people who say they hate peat.
Yeah.
When I first joined the club, I was an anti-peater. So, and it has nothing to do with Buttigieg. I'm really just sorry, had to get it in.
Yeah, no, it's not, doesn't always work for everyone, even evolving, but my ex-father-in-law, he was also a non-peater, and he came to Islay with me in 2017, and I converted him completely. So it doesn't happen to everyone, but yeah, it's kind of fun when it does. work, but
Dennis wants to buy a bottle.
no, he doesn't. And I don't have it for sale. This is one that you can't get. So, I mean, you could probably find it online in Europe somewhere and they'll ship it, but it'll be expensive. And I know he doesn't want it. So.
But Charles, remember, I got that bottle of Port Ray, so I'm very,
Yeah.
I will go a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's good. Emily and Jordan, that was in your wheelhouse. You like the Lagavulin? Yeah. Now, do you like the sherry expressions more than the bourbon or not?
We have a little bit of a movie on in the background for my son.
Okay. All right. No problem.
Number 2 was my favorite by far.
Okay.
But I still like this one.
All right. Cool. Emily? Same?
Yes. I mean, they taste different, but I wouldn't say one.
I'm not putting you on the spot or anything. I did drive down to both of your houses this morning, so I will put you on the spot a little bit. But I'm glad you guys are here for sure. All right. I'm curious, the Dave and Connor who came to Islay, what did you guys think of the Lagavulin? I know obviously you had a ton of whiskey on Islay when we were there, but where did that fall? Like, I mean, we did, just so people know, we literally did our tour or a tasting at the warehouse there and got on a boat and did an incredible seafood extravaganza. But we did taste the Lagavulin, one of their jazz festival. There's a jazz festival in September on Islay, which is also a great festival, but they release a bottle for that every year. And one of our guests on our tour bought a bottle of that to share with the group on the boat. And that was fantastic. It was a beautiful, beautiful whiskey. But where did the Lagavulin 10 festival kind of rank in your overall Islay experience? Just curious.
We had it twice, right? It was I think the third dram when we did the distillery tour, and then the next day it was the one they served us to start with for the warehouse tasting.
Yeah.
I have like very different impressions of it after some of the other expressions we tried in that little tasting after the tour.
Yeah.
It's like, this is the best of the bunch. And the next day, compared to the ones that came out of the barrels there, it's like, that's the worst of the bunch. But it's swing here again tonight, so.
Well, anytime you have whiskey straight out of the barrel, it's hard to beat that. But yeah, I hear you. It was the best for sure. That after the tour, no question.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same direction. I do enjoy the sherried ones a little bit more, but there's nothing bad or nothing wrong about this. It's, it's got its own unique characteristics, and it's an experiment. I think it came off all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unique for Lagavulin, which is kind of fun. So, I like it that they're pushing the envelope a little bit and trying to be different. And we'll talk about Kilchoman at the end. They totally did that this year for the festival. Unfortunately, we didn't get to try that whiskey because it was gone, but we'll talk about that in a little bit here. All right, so let's move on to Caol, the other Diageo distillery. Now, I knew going in to both Lagavulin and Caol that I was going to buy these regardless, whether we were able to taste them or not, because I knew I wanted to bring these back for the club, because these were the more approachably priced whiskeys. Again, not buying a $2,000 whiskey. So the Lagavulin was $201.87. This Caol was $212.37. So both over $200. That's reasonable, not cheap, and not. I wouldn't buy them personally, probably, just because that's a little out of my wheelhouse. But For a special bottle to have, they're great to have, no question about it. But I was very happy with this one. We did taste this at the distillery on our tour. And most everybody bought one that was in our group. And I'm glad they did, because I think this is a really great whiskey. So Kalila, a lot of Kalila is used to make Johnny Walker. So when we taste Johnny Walker and we taste the smoke from Johnny Walker, that's coming from Kalila. And a big percentage of what they make at Kalila goes into Johnny Walker. So when they release single malts, there are not a lot of them. And we do have some here in the US, the 12-year, the 15-year. But not a lot of other expressions, not like Lagavulin. Lagavulin has a lot more expressions available. So this release came out. There were 1,404 bottles of this compared to the 1,800 bottles of Lagavulin. So a little bit fewer bottles. This one's 13 years, so we're a little older than Lagavulin as well. But what's really cool about this one is it was finished in ex-ruby port French oak barriques. So we have a port finish. And I was really excited when Kalila decided to release a port finish, because from experience and tasting lots of whiskeys on Islay and here in the States, anytime there's a port either fully matured or finished whiskey that's mixed with peat smoke, it usually works pretty well. And I am a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of fortified wine and peat when it's done right. And I think this is a pretty good one. So we're at 54.5% ABV. So actually, a lot of these whiskeys are all right around the same ABV. None of them are upper 50s. They're all right in that lower 50 level, in between 50 and 55. I mean, the Lagavulin was 56.7. That's the highest. Well, actually, the Kilchoman's 56.9. So we're all right in that kind of 50 to 57 level, which is really fantastic. Nothing too hot in alcohol. So if you nose this one compared to the Lagavulin, it's quite different. Obviously, we get a lot more sweetness with this. You know, port can be overwhelming at times, but when you're finishing in port, it can be just beautiful. Let me pull up my notes on this one.
Charles, I'm sorry, did you say this Kalila is peated or not?
Yeah, there's peat on this one.
All right, maybe I'm just coming off of that Lagavulin 10 and I'm not as sensitive anymore.
Oh, you know what, Jeff? You might be right. Hold on.
I'm not.
Yeah, I think this one is very much more approachable. It's easier.
Yeah, hold on. You might be right, Jeff. This so they do release peated. I forgot this one is unpeated. All right, so we're drinking a port finished unpeated Kalila. So even better for Dennis. That's the thing with Kalila. You never know. Sometimes they're peated. Because normal Kalila is peated at 35 parts per million, so similar to Bowmore. But then this festival release was unpeated. I apologize for saying it was peated. Hold on here. Let me just pull up my notes on this. I forgot. I should have had them up before I talked about it.
Charles, I'm still getting some peat off of this one. Even though they say unpeated.
I wonder if that's a hangover from the Lagavulin.
It could be, yeah. So it's a 13-year-old single malt finished in ex-ruby French oak, sourced from the Douro Valley in Portugal. this is a rare instance of a distillery bottling that's finished in ruby port. Maritime notes and chili spice, Mediterranean flavors, dried fruit sweetness, and smoky undertones. Hold on, let me just make sure.
That's why I asked, is I am getting a very slight smoky something, but I don't know. I couldn't tell if that was just maybe like the type of malting or something. I didn't get peat from it, but it definitely has a slight smoky something going on.
All right, hold on here. All right, here we go. All right. There has to be peat on this. They're not saying anywhere that it's not peated, and they're talking about bonfires and maritime smokiness. It has to be peated. Yeah, I'm getting it on the nose too. So they do unpeated, but this is definitely peated. I mean, it's just lightly peated. So it's in that world of the Bowmore.
Starting to get it more on the palate though.
Yeah, it's coming through. There is an ashiness. I hadn't tasted it when you said it. I was just smelling it, and you made me think, oh my God, maybe I got it wrong. But no, there is peat on this. Here's their tasting notes on this. A mellow nose with a little initial prickle, dry overall, fruity top notes that recall a dry sherry are soon supported by rich, smoky notes that suggest smoked ham with a sweet and savory barbecue sauce. In time, a light maritime note also emerges. The anticipated Kalila bonfire on the beach is complete. The whole aroma appetizing and well-rounded. With a drop of water, they say it's smokier. And now with a suggestion of white wine vinegar. Palate. A rich and smooth texture introduces a taste that starts sweet, then becomes more mouth-watering and saltier as considerable smoke starts to build. I mean, I'm sorry that I said that this might be unpeated. You got me on a different tangent there, Jeff. Overall, it's big and mouth-filling, deliciously rich and bold. Chili pepper spice spreads broadly over the palate, and that bonfire is smoky. Water increases the creamy mouthfeel and reduces the chili pepper somewhat. Finish, lengthy with sweet smoke, a well-managed chili pepper spiciness, and a clean carbolic hint in the aftertaste. Sweetness and salt both come forward if a dash of water is added. So going back to my initial comments, peat works really well with port. I think this is really nicely balanced. I couldn't remember after last week if this was peated or not. It shows you how busy we've been in the shop this last week. It's been crazy. So what do you guys think of this? Dave and Diane, is this back in your world?
Back in the wheelhouse.
Right.
Yeah, it was a very approachable, scotch. It wasn't too scotchy. How's that?
Scotchy scotch.
Scotchy scotch. So yes, no, this was a good one. That was a good one.
So the one that you didn't like, the Lagavulin 10, that is the Offerman Scotchy Scotch bottle. So there you go.
That was a little much, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen Parks and Recreation, but he's the character that has a Lagavulin bottle occasionally.
Yeah, I would watch that.
Not in years, and I have no clue what it was. Our kids watched it. We know nothing.
I haven't watched it either, but I've seen the clips with him. Yeah, so Kalila, I'll tell you what, in 2019, when I was there, their festival bottle was one of the best of the festival. They've really kind of stepped up their game. I think originally when the festival was out for many years, they didn't really care about it because they were the big industrial making lots of whiskey for Johnny Walker. Nobody really cared about Kalila, whatever. So they didn't care about their festival bottlings. But for the last 5 years or so, their festival bottlings have been great. And it just comes to show you how wonderful single casks or small groups of casks can really be from any distillery. It doesn't matter if it's an expression that you don't like from their general core. It could be really great as a single offering or as a special limited release. I think this is a really great one. I'll mention it now because we're kind of done with the festival bottlings, but there was a group from Germany that was at the festival that bought, like every festival bottle that you could get your hands on. And they brought them back to Germany and they did a big tasting similar to what we're doing tonight. They had more bottles. They had some bottles that I couldn't get my hands on. But they ranked them. So they did and it was a big group. It wasn't just 20, 28, which is what our group is for this tasting. They ranked them, and the 3 bottles that came out on top, one of them we're not tasting tonight, but we were able to get our hands on, is a small Valinch from Bruichladdich, which was the festival Valinch, which was a very sherry forward 17-year-old Valinch. Yeah, Dave's looking for his bottle there, but it has a picture of the whole team of Bruichladdich on. That was one of the top 3. I can't remember where it ranked, but the other two that made it in the top 3 of all of the festival bottlings was this Kalila and the Bowmore that we started with, the 19-year. So we're at least getting to try 2 of the 3 that they had ranked in their top 3 of all of the festival releases. So that's pretty cool. And I do have to say, I think this Kalila is great, just like the previous Kalila festival bottlings have been really great as well in the last few years. They're actually putting some attention to what they're wanting to put out there. Where do you guys rank this in tonight's tasting? Just curious. I know that Bunnahabhain 23 was pretty special. And the Bowmore is obviously, I think most people like that one too, but
if you put the Bunnahabhain aside, this is almost like saying, what's your favorite child? These are they're all different. I'm enjoying each and every single one of them.
Yeah.
I'd have a hard time rank ordering.
Yeah. Nice. I mean, that's the purpose of this, right? I mean, Islay is its own little ecosystem, an island that just does their own thing, but their whiskeys can be vastly different.
Yeah.
We haven't even touched Bruichladdich tonight. We just
I love Bruichladdich.
Yeah, I mean, we are gonna do a Bruichladdich tasting. It's coming at some point. And I have a lot of really great bottles that I've saved up, not Octomore stuff, because we did the Octomore vertical already. So all non-Octomore Bruichladdich stuff, but peated and unpeated too, not just peated. But there was no way to even include that tonight, because there's just so much that comes out of that distillery. Okay. How are we doing on time tonight? 8:30. Wow. I've been talking a lot. You guys haven't been talking too much.
Love listening to you, Charles. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, we've had 5 grams now. I think we're ready.
So you know what Holly does? She does this New York Adventure Club tasting, and she does it every month. And she's got a following, and they do it like every month with her. And I think you have to look up New York Adventure Club. It's all based out of New York City through a operator down there, but she hosts it and she sends the kits out and does all this stuff. Well, she starts the tasting at 9 o'clock Eastern because she has a lot of people on the West Coast, and it's 6 o'clock there. So they go, you know, an hour and a half, whatever, in the tasting. And then she opens up like a hangout room. And it's required, like the guy who she works with down in New York City is like, oh no, this has got to be part of the experience. There's got to be this hangout room, and you've got to be there. And she has to be there because it'll close if she's not there, because she has to shut down the Zoom or whatever she uses. And they're like chatting on after all these whiskeys, you know, forever. And it's like midnight and she wants to go to bed. That's all she's thinking about. So we do it a little differently here with the Saratoga Whiskey Club. We do our 6 drams or 7 drams or 8 drams, but then we shut down things. You can go home and talk to your spouse or significant other and talk about how great the whiskey was, or but yeah, we're not gonna hang out. We see each other enough, so
You got to get up and harvest in the morning, you know, it's us farming.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, I'm stay up that late, so.
Yeah, no, that's pretty late. Definitely she's younger than me when it comes to how late you can stay up. But all right. So our last bottle tonight, this is totally random. This is one that from a distillery that we visited. I had a great experience. Again, Kilchoman is not a distillery that a lot of people know. It's younger on Islay, even though it's been around now 18 years or so. It's really great. The people there, what they're doing, I mean, they're awesome. A lot of it is local barley that they grow right there. Not all of it, about half right now. They were going for 100%, and then they realized that on Islay it's really hard to grow barley, so that number it kind of keeps dropping. And they do 100% Islay release every year, which is fantastic. But a lot of their releases now are, you know, less than 50% or 50%, which is fine. You know, you got to do what you got to do. If you're doing it right, however, and distilling it the proper way and maturing the proper way, that's all we need to know. So this bottling that we're having to wrap up our night is a Kilchoman single cask, distillery exclusive, only available at the distillery. This is not something you're going to see in First Fill or anywhere here. This was a 50 ppm release, so pretty high peat smoke release. This is finished in white port. So the last whiskey we had was finished in ruby port. This one is finished in white port. This one is 56.9%. This was distilled in, or the date that the barrel was filled was November 18th, 2015. And it was bottled in May 13th of 2024. So that makes it 8 years, not 9 years, because it's not a full 9 years. So 8 years old, finished in white port. And one of those things, you know, when you're visiting these distilleries, and we did get to try this and it was delicious. And that's why I bought it. You never know what you're going to come across. They all have random whatever. Now, I mentioned earlier that they did an experimental release for their festival bottling. Their festival bottling this year was unpeated. They've never done an unpeated release ever. And people loved it, which is great, but also not great because they don't plan on doing unpeated whiskey. That's not their thing. But they did want to show you how great their whiskey could be if it was unpeated, and it was truly fantastic. So fantastic that I couldn't get a bottle. It sold that quickly. So this is a single cask, distillery only bottling, only 244 bottles of this available. So very small release, just one barrel. White port finish. They don't actually say how long the finish was. I can't remember if they told us or not, but here are the tasting notes. Nose, salted caramel, hints of peach, crumble, and baking spice. Palate, caramel syrup opens up to baked cinnamon and cloves, then waves of maritime oak and citrus. Finish, peppery, sweet, long, lasting, smoky finish. Incredibly viscous. This sticks to the glass and to your tongue and mouth like no other whiskey we've had tonight. This is a thick mouthfeel. It's a heavy, heavy dram. Highly peated, but doesn't come off as too peated. I mean, it is peated, but it's not like crazy sharp peat. This is more, you know, with the white port again, balancing out that peat smoke.
So what makes it so viscous, Charles?
It's the way they distill. It's the way their method.
Okay.
You know, it's also probably, I'm not sure where the barley came from for this bottling. It doesn't say if it was their own barley or not, but you know, it's just their fermentation, their distillation, the process that they use creates a very viscous, oily whiskey.
It's not sweet like honey, but the coating is almost like having honey in your mouth.
Very mouth coating.
It's pretty spicy though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely this chili pepper or pepper kind of note. It's in the back.
Yeah.
It's kind of in the back of my mouth towards my throat. And that would come from the finish. You know, that's kind of the ending part of the dram. I mean, I'm getting a little on the middle as well, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I remember when we tasted this at the distillery, it was solid and very reasonable. So this is $135.07 for a single cask Kilchoman white port finish. That's a bargain. I mean, really, really, really solid bargain. So it was a no-brainer to pick up this bottle.
So Charles,
Yeah.
the PM on this then would be about the same as the Laphroaig?
Yep.
So I'm not, you know, I'm a Laphroaig fan to start with, but this does not taste nearly as peaty. It's much more mild to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, very drinkable.
Yeah, and a lot of that's from the distillation, the way that they do their process, the fermentation. You know, Laphroaig, I can't remember the times that they use for fermentation. But I believe, let me just look it up real quick, because that has a big deal to do with okay. All right, there's Laphroaig's standard fermentation time is 55 hours, which is incredibly short. That's less than 3 days. Again, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. It's just that's what Laphroaig does. It's a very short fermentation. The longer you go with fermentation, the fruitier and kind of tropical your distillate is going to become. And let's just take a look at what Kilchoman, I can't remember. These are all things that I should have memorized, but so Kilchoman's 85 hours. Again, it's not that much longer, but it's a day longer.
Enough to make a difference.
Enough. Well, I mean, that's part of it. It's not, it's probably their distillation as well. And when they make their cuts and all of it. And who knows, the barley that they're using can make a difference as well. So all of it really makes a difference. And then the barrel type. So Laphroaig, we were tasting those quarter casks and ex-bourbon. You know, we didn't have this very, I mean, we had some Pedro Jimenez, but it wasn't as sweet as this white port. You know, white port is a much sweeter dessert kind of wine, fortified wine. So, you know, definitely going to counter more of that smoke as well. So all of it makes a difference. All of it really makes a difference. But this is very viscous. I mean, it just sticks to the glass as well.
I want to smoke some salmon and have this with it.
That'd be very good. Yeah. Yeah, we did a really incredible seafood stew last week with we had cod and mussels and shrimp in the stew. And then we had wait, oh, how was it? No, so we had in the stew was shrimp and mussels, and then in the bowl we had cod and shoot, what was it? No, there was another seafood. I can't remember. Oh, scallops. We had cod and scallops in the bowl, and then you poured over the shrimp and mussel stew on top of the cod and scallop. Oh, and we had a smoked salmon dip as well as an appetizer. So all of these, yeah, all of these whiskeys really worked out very nicely. And we had crab cake bites as well. So I did the full seafood extravaganza last weekend or last week because that's what this whiskey is for. This is not for venison. This is not.
All right. So next year I'll come and we'll do paella, something like that.
Yeah, I actually was thinking of paella would be fantastic. I just don't have a big paella dish or a pan. So I would love to do that sometime. You need a really big one though for a big group.
Yeah, well,
you know,
I can feed 12. That's it.
Yeah, we might need two paella pans to feed a bigger group. But yeah,
cool.
So just curious, I'm going to just go through the room real quick before we close up. I just want to hear your top 3, if you can. No pressure, but just if you can, just top 3. So I'm going to start on my left top, which was Dennis and Steve. Steve, what was your top 3 since Dennis was kind of partially taking?
I really like the Kilchoman.
Okay.
And the Bunnahabhain and the Bowmore.
Okay. All right. Kilchoman, Bunnahabhain, Bowmore. Let's go to BJ.
Well, I hate to say the same thing, but those were my top 3 as well.
Oh, nothing wrong with that. That's okay. Kilchoman, Bunnahabhain, and Bowmore. All right. Dave and Connor.
Bunnahabhain, Bowmore, and Kalila.
Okay.
For me.
Yeah, I'd go Kalila, Kilchoman, and the Bunnahabhain.
All right. All right. Let's go, Meg. What do you got?
I've got Bowmore, Lagavulin, or sorry, Caol, and Kilchoman.
Okay. Everybody's kind of sticking with those 3 or 4. Dave and Diane? Lagavulin, right?
Kilchoman, Bowmore, and Bowmore.
I don't know if I heard that.
I've got Bunnahabhain, Bowmore, and Caol.
All right, so we're still in those four. So what was the one that was missing? It was Laphroaig and Lagavulin are the
Okay,
loose.
so I haven't voted yet.
All
I
right,
like
Larry, you're up.
the Bunnahabhain, the Kilchoman, but I tie the Lagavulin and the Laphroaig. I like them both. I actually ordered the Laphroaig or the
Oh.
the Laphroaig.
All right, awesome. All
And
right,
if
so
you-
we do
if
have a
you've
Lagavulin
intercepted-
Laphroaig person here.
And if you've intercepted my shipment that's supposed to go out tomorrow, maybe I don't have to pay twice.
Oh, you know what? That's a good idea. I haven't shipped it yet. I
Cool.
was waiting. And I
Yeah, 'cause
have
we
it
were gonna be
boxed
home.
up, but I can unbox it. That's not a problem. So
Cool.
I will do that. Jeff?
I'm actually going against the mold here. Caol, for me, just barely edged out the Lagavulin and the Laphroaig.
All right.
Lagavulin and Laphroaig were
Wow.
almost my number one and number two.
Wow, you're
I
like
love
the
them.
complete opposite of everybody. That's really awesome.
I actually liked the Bunnahabhain way less than I expected to.
Okay.
It would have actually put it near the bottom for me.
Wow. All right. Hey, that's why we're here. Everybody's got their own jam. That's great.
You can't
All
be
right.
right every time.
All right, Jordan and Emily, what do you guys got?
I definitely just go along with the main crowd, Bunnahabhain being my favorite in the last two.
Okay.
My favorite was Bunnahabhain, followed by Laphroaig and Lagavulin.
All right. Laphroaig got a couple of votes there and Lagavulin. That's great. All right, cool. Nice. I love that. All right. That was fun. I hope you guys really enjoyed tonight. I am gonna sign off. I'm not gonna pull a Holly and do a hangout room. But I hope you enjoyed tonight, and we have some great tastings coming up the next 2 weeks virtually as well. Hope you can join if you can, and really great scotch and a little bit of rum as well thrown in there. But yeah, so here's to our fake Feis 2024. Hope you enjoyed tonight, and I'm going to sign off, and I'll see you guys soon. Actually, I'll see you, Dennis and Steve, next week, right? All right, see you guys next week. So,
All right.
Tomorrow, or wait, isn't it Sunday, Saturday?
yeah, no, Sunday is the track.
Yeah.
Come, that would be great.
We'll
Gonna
see you at
have
the
a lot
track.
of fun.
See
Yeah,
you
see
see
you
you
at
at
the
the
track.
track.
But they're actually coming from Maine next week. They're going to be here in the shop while I do the virtual tasting with Dramore and the founder in Scotland next week. So,
Oh,
Nice.
I will see them personally while we do that. So I'll see you guys soon. So,
Thank you.
have a good night. All right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.